In this video, we're going to begin talking about personality differences, and we're going to start by talking about internal and external processing, the way that different people think. Because you raised three boys that are very, very different from one another. Very different. When we were young, you identified, obviously, I have an athlete, an artist, and a mathematician. Obviously these are three very different kids, but as we got older, I remember really moving into having discussion about how different we operated. I remember having things like Myers-Briggs tests and personality tests and skills tests, just to it was very normal for us to do that. And I think that's something that my wife and we do with Finley, is just trying to think about, okay, how does he think? How does he feel about new situations? Is he more extroverted? Is he more introverted? And how can we kind of identify some of those things early, but also looking at our own communication styles and skills, and almost trying to anticipate a little bit, what are the challenges we might face in the future? Like, what are the needs that he's going to need in the future? Because what we've identified with Finley is that he's very cautious, very, very cautious, that he tends to really think about what could go wrong in this next scenario. And sometimes to the point that it stresses him out too much, that he doesn't even want to do an activity because he's worried about what could go wrong, and really worried about things that haven't happened. And he's worried about multiple things that could go wrong, even though not every bad outcome can happen, just one. And just thinking forward, oh man, he might, when he's a teenager, he might be a little stress ball if he's worrying about everything that can go wrong as a 6-year-old. What's he going to be like as a 16-year-old? And I think it is something that I've learned from the way you raised us, is that as you notice those personality differences in children, young children, as they grow up, those personality differences are still there. That those personality differences lead to just very different. If your 5-year-olds are different, your 16-year-olds are going to be different. And I feel like that's something that, when I look at all the materials that I've looked at, any books on parenting and all of everything like that, they just are never quite unique enough. There's no book that can prepare you for your child. There's no book that can tell you how to parent your child. Like, some children might need strict boundaries. I mean, all kids need boundaries, but some kids need very strict, structured schedules, while some kids need to, to be told to relax a little bit and not be so structured. And so it's like what one child needs might be the exact opposite of what a different child needs.
I know I recognize that in your brother that is my clone. We're a little, and I remember he came home from school. He must have been like in, I don't know, second grade or something. And he came home and from school. He's like, "Oh, I have to get this homework done, and I have so much homework to do, and I have to get." Or maybe he was a little older. I don't know. And I just remember thinking, "No, you don't need to do this now. It's not that much. You need to eat your snack." I always had their after school snack. Eat their snack. You go play. And after dinner, we'll look at this. Like, okay. So he did that. And after dinner, we sat down and looked at it. He's like, "Oh, yeah, it's a few spelling words, not that much to do." And he was fine. But then I think some people, their kids get home from school. Okay, do your homework. Well, maybe that's not the best time for them to do homework if they're hungry and stressed, and and everyone's different. But I give him that particular situation time. He was like, so, and I like, no, that's not what you need right now. I'm obviously an external thinker. That's why I could never do a live interview, because I'm thinking, and maybe the first thing that comes out is not actually what I really want to do or think, but you just never know what that could be. I'm brainstorming all the time. And but your dad is obviously an internal thinker. Unfortunately, it took me several decades to realize if he ever said, that, oh, maybe we shouldn't do that, or maybe you shouldn't say that. If he actually said that, that means he had thought about it and had good reasons. Ding, ding, ding. And we were at some marriage seminar or something, and they talked about internal and external thinkers. And your dad was just like, that's it. That's why, like, well, we talk about we're going to go eat, and he goes like, "Oh no, we're guys just thinking of things." Or even now, while we'll be talking, and he'll, "Oh, that's right, you're just thinking." But I wish I would have recognized that earlier in Doug, because he was also an internal thinker, and I realize now there were times when, like me, he said, "Oh yeah, I just want pizza and have my friends over for my birthday," and I'd be like, "Oh, well, we could also." It would take him like 5 times to say, "No, I really just want pizza." And instead of like with his brothers, if they would have said that, and I would have been like, "Oh," and they'd be like, "Oh yeah," and we go banter back and forth and brainstorm what we want to do. But I wish I would have realized sooner about that when Doug actually said something. He'd already thought about it, and that's really what he wanted to do. So that's something I wish I would have recognized sooner.
I read a similar thing in a book called Quiet by Susan Cain, and it's a book about introverts, that oftentimes people who really think through what they're going to say before they say it never get listened to. So a lot of decisions are made in this kind of like, okay, everyone's just going to talk and say what their ideas are. We're just going to have be this fluid thing. But the people who really think things through thoroughly, that kind of scenario doesn't work, because by the time you've actually really thought it through and come up with an idea, everyone's moved on to the next topic, or they've already made a decision. And so sometimes
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug. Do you feel like that happened to you?
uh, no, not really. No, not really. Because we did some things a little bit differently in our family. I know there's a lot of things that you were very intentional about, like vacations, for example, that it's not like, oh, we're going to sit down as a family and decide where we're going to go. You would have like, okay, Doug, I remember it being your turn to decide. We are going to plan a vacation around what Doug wants to do this time. Uh, and you did like make that space.
Yes, I made the ultimate sacrifice. I remember Doug wanted to go to Crater Lake, which involved camping. And we got stuck in this huge hailstorm, but we had a beautiful day at Crater Lake that we will always treasure and remember.
Well, and one of the things that I think is significant about that memory for me is I love I loved that vacation, even though it rained every night. And I remember there being water running under our tent, and Dad hated it. What I remember about that is, okay, Dad hates camping. There, he is. Everyone knows this. I love camping. I'm a lot like Dad, but that's one way that we are very different. I love camping. Dad doesn't like camping, and I don't think you're a big fan of camping either. But but we went. But we went camping, and because I wanted to, and I think one of my brothers likes camping. The other one I don't think cares that much.
Well,
But
they all like camping now. I don't know. They didn't get that from me.
it was significant to me that you listened to me, because
Oh,
it's
good. It's always good when you hear decades later you did it right. There's no going back.
well, and it's surprising to me how many parents will not listen to their kid if their kid wants to do something that they don't like. Like the fact that, oh, I wanted to go camping, that's what I chose as a vacation. That's what I chose that I wanted to do, that we still did it even though you don't like it. There's a lot of parents aren't that way. A lot of parents are like, well, if you there's a lot of families, if the parents don't like camping, there's no way they're going camping. In the description of this video, you can find a worksheet to help you start to process your own personality to figure out how you communicate. Don't forget to like and share for more.